All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Gilbreth. I'm a librarian with UAB Libraries and a librarian here at Lister Hill Library. And today we're going to talk about a database that you have access to called Simply Analytics. Simply Analytics is a database or a resource that combines demographic, psychographic, business, and geographic information and can make uh, mappable information. It can make comparison tables. It can really do all sorts of things. It's a really versatile and powerful tool. It's marketed as a tool for business, but I've been using Simply Analytics since, say, 2015 or so 9 years. And over time, I've seen that it can have uses for really anyone who uses information about populations, where people live, and you can get at least some health related information from the business information that's contained within Simply Analytics. So I'm going to be covering today how to create a Simply Analytics project, how to identify information that's relevant to your needs, how to create a map, a comparison table, and then how to export and save your project. Again, I am recording this. It will be uploaded on YouTube, and at the end, I'll ask for y'all to put your emails in the chat if you would like for me to email you the link. So, can everyone see my screen here with the library website?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So to get to Simply Analytics, we're going to go here to our databases page. And you can go under S's or simply type in Simply Analytics. I'm going to try to avoid making too many puns like that if I can. So when you click on Simply Analytics, well, it should prompt you if you want to log in with an account or log in as a guest. I logged in earlier as a guest. So let me go ahead and sign out. So when you access Simply Analytics, this is what you should see. By all means, you don't have to make an account in Simply Analytics, but if you're working on a project that you may come back to, or something you're going to be working on over time, you may want to create a free Simply Analytics account to save projects to that account. But today we're going to sign in as a guest. Interesting. I've never had that happen before. If anyone is logged into Simply Analytics in this workshop, if you could close that out, please. Unfortunately, we only have a very limited number of seats to use this. If I can't access it, this may be a very short workshop. There we go. Thank you. All right. So you select guest to access it. And that is, I'll be honest, sort of an issue. So we have an academic institutional license, but Simply Analytics is a business advertising and marketing industry tool. And so it's very expensive. So we have, I believe, it doesn't say it here. I believe the standard for an academic institution is 3 seats. So that's 3 users for the entire campus. So whenever you go into work on a Simply Analytics project, you may run into that issue where you get locked out. Thus, I would ask when you use it, when you're done using it, go ahead and just close out of it. Because as long as it's actively pulled up, it's blocking someone else from accessing it. So I'm going to close that out. And this is the starting view you'll see. So it asks you what kind of project you want to start with. I'm going to start with a map. And to create a map, you need at least 2 things. You need a location. So today I'm going to be using Birmingham, Alabama. And then you need whatever kind of information it is that you're wanting to map. Oh, you can also map businesses, and I'll give an example of that in a little bit. So when we go into data, you can see it ranges from the kind of data you would get from some sort of census, population data related to sex, gender, age, race, citizenship, educational attainment. And then you have more granular stuff related to that, jobs and employment, so percent employment status, how people get to work. We have information about poverty, so anyone investigating, oh, what is it called? Social determinants of health, like this might be the sort of information you want to be looking for. Languages spoken at home, ancestry, households, family and marital status. And then probably the stuff that's going to be most interesting to y'all, I would guess, is population data and health related information. So let's look, I'm just going to pick one of these as demonstration. Percent health insurance coverage by age. Let's look at no health insurance coverage, 6 to 18 years of age percentage. You can also do whole numbers. It's just sort of, it depends on what you want to do with the information. And then I'm going to click done. And in a moment, it maps out the geography I've selected and the information. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at the city of Birmingham. The yellow outline here is the city limits. And that's one thing that I've learned just as an aside from using SimplyAnalytics is how absolutely wild city limits are in some cases. It's very strange. We're looking at Birmingham and then the greater Birmingham area. We're looking at percent health insurance coverage by age, 6 to 18 years, no health insurance coverage, the year 2023, and by zip code. So, and then the map center is given with that particular zip code. I can move this over so we can have a bigger coverage on the screen. So there are immediately several things we can do here. For one, these maps are dynamic, so you can zoom in and out. And as you do, the scale will change. So as I'm zooming out, we have changed from, as you can see, zip code to by counties. I have not gotten it to show by state, but I've never purposefully tried to do that before. So, and then as we zoom, you can see these, it's giving us 5 brackets with information. And as we zoom, this information may change. So now we're looking at census tracts. As we zoom in further, we may get down to block groups. And it may take a second to oh, okay. So this particular information isn't available at that level of granularity. All right. So something you may want to do pretty immediately when you make a new map is you go over to Legend, click Edit, and you can then change this information. So you can change the number of categories if you're trying to do something particular with that. But the thing you may want to change from quantiles to natural breaks. Equal intervals, you can set custom value ranges. So quantiles breaks it into essentially, they're not equal intervals, but it breaks it up into 5 units that work with the data. Since a lot of the information I've looked at previously is on a local level, I tend to break it into natural breaks local. And you can see the category ranges have changed pretty drastically. So let me change that back just to compare. So this is quantiles national, and you can see there's not a lot of differentiation here. So in the greater Birmingham area, it ranges from 0 to 3.5%. If I change to natural breaks local, there's still not a lot of differentiation in terms of the numbers, but the areas that where there are individuals who have of was it 6 to 18 who have less insurance coverage become more stark and easier to identify. And you can also change the color scheme. And if you want to manually set the ranges, you can do that. So I'm going to click done. Also looking at the screen here, you can change how you're interacting with the map. So automatically you have a hand that clicks and drags. You can zoom in with a bounding box. So if I want to look specifically at this area, I could click and drag it. It will zoom to there. And there's also an information tooltip. So for example, so this is another interesting thing with on-the-fly statistics. So this range is currently 2.15% to 55%, which is wild when you compare it to the other ones. But if we want to see the information for a particular zip code, we can click on it. This value is 2.33% for 35020. And it'll just keep doing that as you click. So let me click back to that. Now, that's essentially how you build a map in Simply Analytics. You pick the location, you pick the data you want, and it maps it out. Now, in terms of finding the information that's relevant to your needs, there are a few ways you can do it. I recommend, at least until you get a better idea of how Simply Analytics works, picking a particular category and scrolling through it, because it can give you a good idea about the sort of information that is contained in Simply Analytics. You can also do a data search here. So would anyone like to volunteer something they would be interested in seeing mapped out in Simply Analytics? You can put it in chat, or you can unmute and just say it.
I'd be curious to know about if there's anything related to transportation or access to transportation.
Absolutely. So we have a category for that, but I can also search transportation. So any particular kind of transportation in general?
Thinking about like proportion of the population that has access to private transportation.
Gotcha. Let's see. Hmm. Okay. So I had searched for transportation, and then within this, I searched for private. So up here we have American Community Survey US, commuting journey to work, place of work, means of transportation to work by class of worker. So we have private transportation in these different categories, which is probably what we want. So let's look at percent private, for-profit wage, and salary workers. All right. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. So we get some of the suburbs as well. All right. So we have, interestingly, so what is this? Okay, this is national quantiles. Let's look at natural breaks local. Okay, so we've got our first range, which I don't really see any, is 0 to 50%. So there has to be one somewhere that is in that range, or else it wouldn't have given one. But the main other categories are 50% and up. So it looks like, broadly speaking, at least half of the greater Birmingham area uses private transportation to get to work, which makes sense given the state of our public transit situation. So further into Birmingham, so these zip codes tend to use less private transportation, at least as communicated to the American Community Survey. And it seems, this is sort of an interesting zip code here. One would imagine that the further one gets away from Birmingham, the higher the percent would be for private transportation, but the numbers don't bear that out here. So let me bring that back up. So if we have any questions about this data, so for each datum you can select in SimplyAnalytics, there's this little three-dot button to the right of it. You can click on it to use the data variable, add to favorites, or what I think is really useful is viewing the metadata. So it gives us the year of when the information was gathered, the path we got to it within SimplyAnalytics. So this is for workers 16 years and over, and the definition. So 16 years and over, that is members of the armed forces and civilians were at work during the reference week. Data on place of work refers to the geographic location at which workers carried out their occupational activities during the reference week. And so it's got the full definition for this particular data point listed here. So this can be really, really useful, and it will give you a very strong idea whether something you're looking at is relevant or not. So this is particularly important, I would say, for market segments. So market segments, if y'all aren't familiar, are used, at least from my previous liaison experience, they're definitely used in advertising or targeting advertising campaigns. I'm sure they're used in marketing more broadly. But market segments define parts of the population that have certain consumer behaviors. I will say there is some data in here from the company that produces SimplyAnalytics, and some is Claritas Prism data that they've purchased. Let me scroll down some. Okay, so Claritas Prism Premier. So let's look at one of these just to give you the kind of information, to give you an idea of the sort of information that's available in here. So again, we have the year, where it came from. A definition, this isn't one of the really interesting ones though. Let me see if I can find it. So it will tell you, or maybe it is Simmons Local. Data sheets. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so they've changed how some of this works a little bit. But this is the kind of psychographic information you can get. And I really suspect that this does have a use in social research and healthcare research and so on like that. I haven't investigated it yet, if nothing else for targeting public health campaigns or what have you. But these are profiles of the psychographic groups that tell you their age, kind of property where they live, how old their vehicles are, their technology use, has household income, type of vehicles they own, and then an overview of the kind of folks these are. So like, what do they do for fun? What do they listen to on the radio? You know, where do they get their coffee? Like all that sort of thing. It's really interesting. And in advertising, you build a profile for, you know, the kind of person your ad campaign would target, and then you pick one of those psychographic groups that would sort of match up with it. Anyway, so that sort of data is in here too, and I think that may be worth investigating. But I mean, there's data in here like what time of day are people watching TV? You know, there's information on any kind of consumer good. So you're interested in a campaign about smoking. So household average consumer spend estimates, tobacco products, and smoking supplies. And if we click on this metadata point, this is from 2022, survey 5-year estimates. I'm not sure if I thought this would sort of be by week, but this may be like annual expenditures. In which case, we see that in downtown Birmingham area, folks are spending the least amount of money on tobacco products. Higher in Mountain Brook and Vestavia, out here past Chelsea, sort of interesting, um, and so on like that. So honestly, I would take if you want to use Simply Analytics as a tool, I would set aside some time, 30 minutes, maybe something like that, and just go in here and start finding data variables that are interesting to you in your research and start playing around with it. Of course, all the usual caveats apply about, being careful about how you are using the data you find and so on like that. All right, so that's how you make a map in Simply Analytics. Now, let's create a data comparison table. So I'm going to click on comparison table, and immediately it's populated by the city we already have selected, the last data variable we have selected, and comparison to the US. Actually, that wasn't the last one. That was the first one we selected. So let us add some data points to this, as well as some locations. Running a little slowly today for some reason. Okay, so we've added Atlanta, and you can just, these are, again, they're interactive, so you can click and drag them. Oh, excuse me. So Nashville is the Nashville-Davidson Metropolitan Government ballots. That's good to know. I may just go with those three for the sake of example. So from here, and I'm going to remove this piece of information from this report. So we have the other data we selected, but now I'm going to add some more. So I'm going to go ahead and add some population in 2018, projected population 2028. Let's see. Age, let's look at percent 35 to 44, percent 45 to 54, 25 to 34. And then maybe let's see. Oh, so we also have some limiters over here, of course. So let's look at since I'm doing these others as percent. So percent mental health not good for greater than or equal to 14 days among adults aged greater than or equal to 18 years. And we'll add the tobacco one in there too, just for funsies. Okay. So I'm going to drag these around a little bit. Okay, so that one doesn't have any data removed from this report. So we have projected population, percent age, percent of folks who are having mental health difficulties, and then, comparing expenditures on tobacco products. So it's building a comparison table is really, it's that simple. You pick your locations, you pick the information you want. Not all of it may be available for in the way you want it to be, but you can play around with it and see. Now then, let's talk about, well, let's look at one more thing related to maps. So you can map out business locations. So you can just do a simple search like, say, I were thinking about opening an ice cream shop or something like that. I could type in ice cream and let's, there we go. Okay, so I took off that datum so that we can see this a little more easily. And it will map out what it has identified as ice cream shop. So probably ice cream in the name. So for each of these, we can click on it. Um, Dairy Queen, sure. So it'll give you the information on uh, that particular. I'm not sure this SIC code is correct, but it may be. So it will give you the name of the business, the address, the SIC and NAICS codes. If you're not familiar with those are industry standard codes to tell you what industry a business is in, sales volume, employees, and the year it was started. So if you're in business and thinking about opening up a small business, this can give you an immediate idea about competition in the area. I would also think, you're thinking about targeting a tobacco campaign, an anti-smoking campaign. You can see, hey, what's the concentration of tobacco shops? You know, where would we want to put an outdoor advertisement to target a campaign? That sort of thing. Uh, at a glance, sort of unsurprisingly, there along are major traffic arteries. So like there aren't really any billboards here, but maybe further down to 80 a little bit might be effective if one wanted to do that. There's an advanced search, so you can do a Boolean search, so we wanted to search for, oh, I don't know. Um, I can't think of any good examples off the top of my head, but you can use much like a traditional academic database, you can build a Boolean search. So you can say, oh, name, uh, number of employees, sales volume, and either contains or starts with. So you can build up a search that way, or you can browse by uh, business categories as well. All right. So now let's talk about how you save, how you export a project from Simply Analytics. Okay. So if we want to, let's say this data point, we would want to make this a little more easy to read, perhaps like that. So percent mental health not good for greater than or equal to 14 days among adults aged greater than or equal to 18, and the spread of tobacco stores. Say we wanted to save this project. We would go to export. We have the window where we can select the view we're going to export. You can change the size. You can unlock the aspect ratio. You can change the landscape, continue to layout. So we have things like, size, orientation, where you can move the legend. So if we want to, I guess, leave it stuck up in the corner. We have the scale listed on here. You can move that around, move it down maybe a little. Oh, you can move it off there. Perfect. Continue to export. You choose your file format. You can email it or save it. Click finish. And there it is. So The maps in particular are really great for use in presentations. I imagine they would be really good for posters. Whatever use you had where, you know, mapping out information geographically would be useful for that. This would be a good use for that project. All right. And we are 30 minutes in, and I've actually already hit all of the points that I'm supposed to hit for this presentation. So does anyone have any questions for me? It's very possible I went through some of this too quickly. So if you have questions for me, you would like for me to go over something in particular, please feel free to ask because we are actually done somewhat early. Also, while you're doing that, while you're thinking up questions to ask, you put this in the chat. Well, thank you. There is a instruction survey here. If y'all would like to fill that out, please, that would be helpful for me and my department. I blocked off an hour because that's standardly what we do for the workshops. But in a sense, Simply Analytics is really easy to use. And there's a lot you can do with it, but in a sense, really the best way to get used to it, once you know the basics, just get in there and play around with it. And I'm going to stop the recording.